First of all, I guess the basic question, why is America's Most Wanted departing from its formula to do a piece on the Killeen massacre or situation?
Well, we have done a lot of segments on heroes in the past and ordinary people who have survived tragedy and performed extraordinary feats during those tragedies or after those tragedies. And nowhere in the country have I seen personally in the last 10 years the reaction of a community like in Killeen. What they have done for the victims of Killeen really is a blueprint for survival. The community support and the way the victims have banded together is really a testimony to the human spirit. And no one really spoke for the victims, and I've spent a lot of time with them, and they feel that the focus has been primarily on the murderer, and that the press focused so much on the murderer, what he ate, where he went, who he slept with, what he did, and nobody really cared about the victims. I'm a victim myself, and we're going to tell their story.
Is this, do you see this as the show starts its fourth year as being something that America's Most Wanted might do more of? Is the show going to change its focus at all from trying to catch criminals? Or?
No, our main focus will always be catching criminals, and I think that's what our audience wants. But our audience has also responded in a very positive way when we show the victim side of the story. You always hear about the perpetrator. You always hear about the criminal in the court system and in the media. But our public likes it when we deviate somewhat and do the victim story and the follow-through and what happens to them.
In terms of this episode, there's been some controversy about it. How do you respond to those people who are critical of your being here and who say maybe you're exploiting this tragedy for your own end?
Well, the only person I've heard say anything negative is the mayor of Killeen. The mayor has not called or talked to one of the victims since the massacre. They're upset about it. I don't know where he gets the right to speak for the victims. The victims came forward voluntarily, 40 plus of them, to talk to me, and they should be able to speak for themselves. I don't take the liberty to speak for them. I don't think the mayor should either.
What about his criticism?
I don't think it's valid. I think, first of all, he should have talked to the victims and asked them how they felt about getting involved with America's Most Wanted. We did. We asked everyone that we could get a hold of the survivors, if they would talk to us and how they felt about it. And we said we would try to treat them with dignity and integrity, as we had for the last 4 years to every victim. And they said, we think our story's important. We're trying to survive just like you are, and the public should know.
In terms of the victims, I guess there's some people who, what is the benefit of them participating? Have you seen something positive they've gotten out of the experience of meeting with you and you guys dealing with this subject?
I think I've gotten more out of this group than they've gotten out of meeting with me. It really has reaffirmed my belief that people can survive, they can go back to their lives, they'll never be the same forever, but they will refuse to let the evil deeds of one psychotic killer ruin their lives forever. And a lot of them have said that they've gotten a lot of benefit out of meeting me and talking to me, but I've gotten just as much benefit out of it because I'm humbled by the experience of meeting with these people, because they are a testimony to the human spirit.
In terms of, if you had to sum it up, what would you say the purpose of focusing on this horrible crime would be?
There were 24 mass murders in 1991 in the United States. There'll be more. It'll happen in other cities. It gets worse every year. No one has known how to deal with this situation. And these people have shown the rest of the United States that there is a way to deal with it. They are the model.
In terms of there being a model, what do you see as the key thing that a town or a community can do when something like this has happened to try and get behind it? What is the critical component of getting over something like this and not being haunted by it?
Well, with 24,000 homicides in the United States last year and 24 mass murders, you would think we would get better at it. You would think that some city would have a prototype to deal with it. The prototype is in here in Little Killeen, Texas. The community raised $150,000 to make sure these people wouldn't lose their homes, that their power wouldn't be cut off. The Luby's people put $100,000 in the bank so that the victims' relatives could come to the funerals. The Army provided a bereavement specialist. They meet continually. The district attorney's office provided a victims counselor, Jill Hargrove, that is walking these people through it. I've never seen that in any community in the United States.
If you had to, for our limited time on TV, sum up what all that means, or what is there a way to sum up what this has been?
Violence is becoming the American way of life. 24 mass murders. Yet this community has survived. They are the blueprint for the rest of the country, and they are a testimony to the human spirit.
And in terms of the blueprint, what is the key element that you think has helped them get together or survive as opposed to not survive?
I think the philosophy.
Hang on, Fort Hood. Hey, they help you?
Okay.
We've talked about a lot of elements that went into the community's response, but if you had to sum up, what's the kind of the key overriding element that made this work where other situations haven't?
This community hasn't forgotten about the survivors or the victims. They haven't said, let's forget about it and put it in our past. They've said, these people have to go on, they have to deal with it, and we're going to be there for them.
How would you describe your relationship with these people and how you all dealt with the tragedy together?
I have one thing in common with these people. I've lost a loved one to a violent crime, and I'm a survivor and a victim, and I'm trying to deal with them. That's the one bond we have in common that a lot of people don't understand unless they were a victim.
How about the taping session? How would you describe how that went? What was it like for you? What emotions went through you?
I spent 3.5 hours with these people in a town meeting, something they came to voluntarily.
With these people and how you all dealt with the tragedy together.
I have one thing in common with these people. I've lost a loved one to a violent crime, and I'm a survivor and a victim, and I'm trying to deal with them. That's the one bond we have in common that a lot of people don't understand unless they were a victim.
How about the taping session? How would you describe how that went? What was it like for you? What emotions went through you?
I spent 3.5 hours with these people in a town meeting, something they came to voluntarily. I had a lot of reservations about going to it because I felt I don't have the formula to heal them. I'm still working on my healing, but I came away from that so charged and so energized by their positive attitude and the feedback that they gave me that I think I got more out of the session than maybe they did.
What was it like for you to meet with that and experience that kind of emotion in a room?
Tough to dig up those old feelings that you're trying to stuff. Tough to remember the pain you went through and to see so many people with so much fresh pain and knowing that they're going through the nightmare that you went through and that you really don't have any pat formula to tell them how to get through it. Tough for me, tough for them. But I think, as many of them said to me, getting together with other people that have been through it and talking about it and saying, I'm doing this is one of the ways to deal with it.
How important is communication, sharing your feelings with someone, and in terms of overcoming a tragedy like this? How important is that, trying to be open and having someone to talk to?
I think counseling and support groups are absolutely essential for survival. Many victims I've met have tried to stuff their feelings and tough it out alone, and I'm glad to see so many support groups popping up all over the country, like survivors of violent crime and parents of murdered children. It's one of the essential ways to know that you're not going to die of a broken heart and you're not going to have to deal with this alone.
Is that kind of support, do you think that's one of the single lessons that makes Killeen different from other places? Or?
Absolutely. Be a homicide survivor in New York City, you're going to have to go it alone. Go through a tragedy in Killeen, Texas, and you've got this kind of support.
In terms of the people, some of the people we talked to said that they were a little upset. They thought that you were going to do more of a show about the survivors and that it's only 10 minutes worth of the show, and maybe they weren't aware of the reenactment. Do you feel like everything was done as well as it could be done to make everyone happy in this instance?
I hope so. I think we've done our homework. I'm very sensitive to victims. I'm very sensitive to how brutal the media can be to victims, because they can be, and they are every single day. They shove microphones in people's faces as they're watching their children die in a fire. I will never understand that, nor do I want to be a party to that. We let them know up front there would be a recreation, that the American public had to know what went on at Luby's and how tough it was for them, but we would also be just as fair, letting the public know that these people were heroes. Some of them were heroes, and some of them are heroes now in the way they're dealing with it and the way that they're surviving, and that there is life after a heinous crime.
How do you feel about the fine line that your show has to walk between being violent and showing that there's violence in order to get an audience to catch criminals, and yet perhaps just making the whole climate of society more violent by seeing more violence on TV?
We're really sensitive to the fine line. We don't use knives going into people's bodies. We're nowhere near as violent as a Miami Vice or a Hunter or something like that, and we're very concerned with it. But I do believe that you have to show what happened, although we could never show how really heinous violent crime is, but it's what stimulates people to get involved and do something about it. We have captured 189 people as a direct result of viewer tips. John Walsh in America's Most Wanted didn't catch those people. Those concerned citizens called up, not as vigilantes, and helped law enforcement catch 189 uncatchable criminals.
How do you feel knowing that some of these people you caught at the beginning of the show went back, did their time, and they're out again?
It's a tough thing to think about, but I believe in justice. I don't believe in vigilante justice. I believe that people should be held accountable for their actions, and it's tough. It's tough, and it's a concern. It's a concern for my safety and my family's safety, but so does every cop and every judge and every DA in the United States have to think about that. It comes with the turf, but it's tough.
I know you're not a criminologist by any means, but you've been with this show for 4 years. You've certainly worked with the police agencies. Is there any kind of an answer? People want an answer for violent crime in this country. Is there a simple answer or a complicated answer? Do you see some way that this country can be less violent, where people could feel safer?
Simple answer is don't think it couldn't happen to you. 23,000 homicides, 40 million American victims last year. The simple answer to that too is get involved, do something about it. Talk to your legislator, say I want things changed. That's the only way things can change. Complicated answer, longer prison terms for repeat offenders, better handgun control, better gun control. Don't take guns away from people, but make sure that they go through a 2-week background check. I own guns. Don't let a person that's a psychotic killer that was just released from an institution or convicted felon buy a gun. Better education in school, better dealing with children, more training for judges, more training for district attorneys. Those are some of the complicated answers.